Russia is once again up to its old tricks. False claims of capturing territory, acting as though it's winning a war when it's failing at every turn. It's all coming out. And in Kostiantynivka, those tricks have come out in full force. Russia said it had captured this key city in the Donetsk region. Maybe it even genuinely believed that it had. But nothing of the sort happened. Russia has been forced into one of its most humiliating retreats of the war so far, as Ukraine has sprung a genius trap that is destroying infiltrators left and right. Groups as small as 3 soldiers going in, none coming out, and it's all due to the brilliance of Ukraine. We'll start with Russia's false claims. On July 3rd, Russia's defense ministry made the grand claim that its forces had captured the city of Kostiantynivka. If true, this would be massive for Russia, part of the Donetsk fortress belt that Russia needs to destroy if it is to claim the Donbass. This city would offer a launching pad for future assaults against larger and more fortified settlements, such as Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. The commander-in-chief of Russia's armed forces, Valery Gerasimov, has reportedly told Putin that the city has fallen, and that Russia is in full control. The propaganda is also out in full force. CNN reports that Russia's announcement came with videos and photographs, all showing Russian soldiers unfurling their country's flag in and around the town center. That sounds difficult to refute, right? But as is so often the case, Russia wasn't quite telling the truth. It might have thought that it was. Russia's military command structure is so broken that the onus is on delivering nothing but good news to Putin, even if that news doesn't reflect reality. Putin is probably sitting in one of his bunkers thinking that Kostiantynivka is indeed in Russian hands. However, what was actually happening, unknown to the Russian infiltrators who had crawled out of their hidey holes to shoot videos with flags before they crawled back inside, was that Ukraine watched everything. As soon as Russia made its grand claim, Ukraine refuted it, and as July has gone on, we've seen why. Russia hadn't captured anything. Its soldiers had been lured into a lethal trap. The first sign that the trap had sprung shut came from Ukraine's 425th Assault Regiment. Known as Skelia, this regiment delivered a blunt and brutal message on Telegram on July 18th. Accompanied by a short video that backed up what it claimed, Skelia simply said, "Skelia Regiment fighters conducted a sweep in Kostiantynivka and raised the Ukrainian flag. The city is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine." Simple, to the point. And just a hint at what had really happened to the Russian soldiers who claimed to have captured this key Donetsk city. More details have emerged since, and most can be surmised when you understand what Skelia does. This isn't any old regiment. Skelia is staffed by some of Ukraine's most elite ground units, and their task is simple: search, destroy, and move on to the next infiltration unit. Skelia are the cleaners. They don't occupy the positions that they attack. Rather, they take out the infiltrators and are then backed by Ukrainian infantry, which reoccupies the territory that Skelia has cleared, thus liberating. As elite as Skelia is, not all of the soldiers in the regiment are special forces. Most aren't, in fact. Skelia is made up of a mixture of battle-hardened and well-trained assault troops, talented infantry, and even soldiers who are relatively new to the battlefield but have shown some propensity for the assault work that Skelia engages in. Here's how it all works. Skelia soldiers don't blindly charge around hoping to find Russian infiltrators. Instead, they follow an approach similar to the find, fix, and finish tactic that the US employed during the Vietnam War. The weapons are different, but the concept is the same. First, Skelia finds. That's usually done using reconnaissance drones, which in this case flew over Kostiantynivka to find the small groups of Russian infiltrators hiding away in the city. When a group is found, the fix is in. But this isn't illicit betting. The fix is sending drones to pin the infiltrators in position, making it so that any attempt to escape will be met with certain death. Some Russian troops still try to get away. They are swiftly dispatched by the drones. The others stay put, knowing that they're trapped and they can't get out. That's when Skelia moves in. Sometimes the finish portion of the strategy involves the use of powerful munitions to eliminate the Russian soldiers where they hide. In other cases, Skelia troops enter on foot, supported by drones, to eliminate those soldiers or force a surrender. But in all instances, the outcome is the same. A tiny infiltration unit that Russia tries to claim is large enough to control a huge portion of a city is taken out of the fight, and Ukraine moves in to fully retake territory that was barely held by Russia in the first place. This, in a nutshell, is the brilliant mousetrap that Ukraine tricks Russia's soldiers into triggering again and again. Those infiltrators have no real choice. They are told to sneak into Kostiantynivka by their commanders. often with false promises that backup will be on the way once they've established their positions. But the backup never comes. It's the crux of the falsehood that Russia tries to sell. It claims complete control of a city when all it's really doing is sneaking small units of troops in to take photos with flags before those soldiers go into hiding. That's when the trap is sprung. Skelia is usually watching. As soon as the Russian soldiers hide, they're dead meat. Mice caught in the trap. And when these infiltration groups are as small as 2 soldiers, the outcome is inevitable. A few soldiers go in, none come out alive. Thanks to the Skelia Regiment's work, as well as that of the infantry that backs the assault teams up, the situation in Kostiantynivka is a far cry from what Russia claims it to be. The city isn't taken, it never was, but it's further away from being held by Russia than it has been for months. On July 20th, after a campaign that lasted about 2 weeks, the now former commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Alexander Siersky, revealed that there are just 145 Russian soldiers left in Kostiantynivka. Russia is still trying to push into the city. Around 20 assaults are being launched every day on the Kostiantynivka sector, but this is a city that had a pre-war population of 67,000. Does anybody really believe that 145 soldiers, or even the few hundred that Russia might have snuck into the city before, could control it? Russia seems to. But just like that, Ukraine has shown Russia that control doesn't come easy, especially when fighting against a regiment that has mastered a particular type of trap designed to tackle Russia's infiltration strategy. What really happened in Kostiantynivka is that Russia managed to get a few infiltrators into the city, and those infiltrators have been destroyed. At this point, some of you may be overwhelmed by a strange feeling of déjà vu, almost as though you've heard this story before. You have, only it wasn't Kostiantynivka last time around. Russia tried to pull almost exactly the same trick, and its soldiers fell for the same trap toward the end of 2025. It didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. Back in November 2025, Russia claimed that it had captured the city of Kupiansk, which is a key city in the Kharkiv region that served as a railway hub for whoever controls it. Just as with Kostiantynivka, Ukraine quickly refuted Russia's claims, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky even going as far as to travel to Kupiansk to take pictures as evidence that Russia was telling lies. However, this didn't mean that Russia had no soldiers in Kupiansk. Again, as we've just seen in Kostiantynivka, soldiers had infiltrated. Around 250 of them, Pravda reported. They were eliminated using the same strategy that the Skelia Regiment used. By mid-December, Ukraine had 90% of Kupiansk under complete control. The parallels are undeniable. The Russian retreat was endlessly humiliating. Once again, we have learned that when Russia claims to have achieved something, the first reaction should always be disbelief. Russia really needs the Kostiantynivka win, just as it needed Kupiansk. But it was all an illusion, again. A false claim of capture by infiltration units so small they could never hold on to territory for long once discovered. But here is where the real problem lies for Russia. Ukraine's Kostiantynivka trap reveals far more about Russia's failures in that city and Donetsk as a whole than Russia once known. The real story of Kostiantynivka is one of a crawling advance and immense losses, all to capture the least important city in the fortress belt. But before we dig deeper, this is a reminder that you are watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that button. So here's what Russia is trying to do in Kostiantynivka. Beyond the infiltration, which clearly hasn't worked, Russia is trying to pull off a pincer maneuver against the city. It has amassed around 11,000 troops in the Kostiantynivka-Druzhkivka tactical area to achieve this. There's nothing wrong with Russia's strategy here. The pincer is as old as war, based on the simple idea of attacking a target from 2 sides, forcing the troops caught in the middle to split their focus. Russia's goal is to take Kostiantynivka, which is at the southern tip of the Donetsk fortress belt, so that it can then push on to take the other 3 cities in that belt. Using the pincer also steadily raises the cost to Ukraine of defending the city, the Independent reports, as more troops need to be dedicated to Kostiantynivka to ensure Russia is unable to make a breakthrough. It all makes sense, and when done well, the pincer would be enough to topple a city like Kostiantynivka. You can probably guess what we're going to say next. Russia's pincer isn't going well. What Russia is actually achieving with its pincer move is a rate of advance that averages about 50 meters per day. Not kilometers, meters. You could probably travel that far by walking from one end of your house to the other, and this pitiful rate of advance is being compounded by Russia losing troops by the bucket load. As the New York Times points out, Russia is now losing soldiers at a rate of 8 casualties to every 1 suffered by Ukraine. That rate has skyrocketed from the 2 or 3 to 1 that it's been for much of the war, showcasing how Kostiantynivka, along with the rest of the fortress belt, is even more dangerous than cities like Pokrovsk, for which Russia has already spilled the blood of tens of thousands of its own soldiers to date. To put it bluntly, a pincer can only be closed when the troops forming it can actually move. And that isn't the case for the soldiers trying to surround Kostiantynivka right now. Russia's rate of advance is glacial, and both the human and monetary cost of its attempt to advance on the city is astronomical. And we don't just need to look at what's happening in Kostiantynivka right now to see that. Russia has been trying to capture this city for a year, and CNN has a handy timeline that shows us just how badly that's been going. Heading back to July 29, 2025, that date is the first time that Deep State, which is a Ukrainian open-source intelligence analyst, reported that Russian soldiers had started trying to push into Kostiantynivka. Back then, the city was still relatively busy, though there were signs of the impending fight that Ukraine expected in the fishing nets that lined the streets, which were intended to protect against drones. Still, Russia had reached the point where it could launch assaults, and Kostiantynivka was on the verge of trouble. By November 2025, Russian forces had edged a little closer, though the majority of their advances were made by infiltrating the drone-infested kill zones on the city's outskirts. Airstrikes had begun. Russia had started sharing videos from infiltrators who had reached the city, but Ukraine still held the center. By January, Russia had advanced a little further, and we saw the beginnings of the Pincer that is still trying to form take place. This month was as good as it was going to get for Russia, as the country was already starting to experience heavy losses of up to 35,000 dead or wounded per month. Still, most of the civilian population had left Kostiantynivka by this time. Looking back, we can see that this is likely the period when Ukraine was setting the traps that will be sprung half a year later. By May, Russian infiltrators were entering the city, as were drones. Then came the early July claims of capture, and we know what has happened since then. What we see here is a story of an advance, yes, but one that is unbelievably slow against a city that is very small. CNN says that Kostiantynivka covers just 66 square kilometers of territory. Taking it should be a cakewalk if Russia's forces are as strong as Putin claims them to be. However, it's taken Russia a year just to get to the point where it can send tiny units of infiltrators and some drones into the city, and Ukraine has already booted them out. The Pincer has barely advanced, and regions assessed to be under true Russian control haven't grown. In fact, looking at the maps from July 2025 and July 2026 that CNN shares, we can see that this area of actual control for Russia has actually shrunk, particularly northwest of Bakhmut. In other words, Russia is actually losing territory around Kostiantynivka. According to a July 21st Interfax report, Ukrainian forces retook 43.37 square kilometers along the border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk during the previous week, with Russia only managing to capture 17.33 square kilometers. This isn't the dominance that Putin wants to display. All of this tells a very different story to the one coming out of the Kremlin. Gerasimov claims Kostiantynivka is captured. It isn't, far from it. Infiltrators have been dispelled by the Skelia Regiment, and Ukraine is actually making gains against Russia, or at least turning Russian-controlled regions into dangerous grey zones. The Pincer can't close because it's nowhere near fully formed, and now Russia is starting to get desperate. As Euromaidan Press reveals, the head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, Andriy Kovalenko, claims that Putin may be forced into mobilizing up to 500,000 Russians this coming fall, risking a massive backlash and perhaps an uprising by a war-weary Russian population. All so that Russia can plug the ever-widening gaps in its lines across Ukraine's east. Those mobilized troops would likely be thrown into battle within 2 weeks of being called up, Kovalenko adds, which demonstrates both Putin's desperation to get more meat onto the field and his commanders' inability to come up with any strategy other than throwing more people at the problem. If this mobilization happens, Kostiantynivka may fall, but the cost of Putin back home would be tremendous. He has tried to avoid mobilization for most of the Ukraine war for a good reason. His people don't want it, especially after so many casualties already. Let's bring things back to Kostiantynivka in the main story. To summarize, Russia claimed to have captured the city. It hadn't. Ukraine sprung a masterful trap, and the infiltrators that Russia said had captured Kostiantynivka have been practically eliminated. Russia has spent a year trying to take this one city, and it's still nowhere near. Why does all of this matter? Well, Putin has no leverage for a start. That's what all of the false claims are really all about. Whether Putin believes his generals when they tell him that Russia has taken cities or he's part of the act, these types of false claims are all about making Russia look stronger than it really is. Putin needs that for two reasons. First, he has to show his own people that Russia is still the military power that it's always claimed to be. And the best way to do that is to feed the claims that Russia is taking Ukrainian cities. Second, Putin has an eye turned toward peace talks. He doesn't want to engage in them, but if he does, he'll do it while reports about Russia capturing territory are making headlines, even when those claims are disproven days later. Putin knows he's running out of time with his stalling tactics when it comes to peace negotiations. And he needs a win, any win, that he can use to support his claim that Ukraine should cede the Donbass to Russia for peace to be granted. That claim isn't coming anytime soon. Kostiantynivka was meant to be a big victory for Russia, a strategically important one no less, which would be the first advance of any actual significance that Russia has achieved for months. The spring and summer offensive was supposed to be much further along by this point. When Russia planned it, the intention was for that offensive to destroy the entire fortress belt. But nothing of any operational significance has been achieved by that offensive so far, the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, declared on July 1st. Russia made its Kostiantynivka claim 2 days later, almost as though they were a response, and we saw how that ended up working. It's at the point now that Russia's rate of advance in Donetsk is so slow that the ISW isn't even confident in trying to predict when the region might fall under Russian control. It could take untold numbers of years, especially when Russia is having so much trouble with the weakest of the fortress belt cities, and the Ukrainian counterattacks that are leading to Russia losing ground it once held. As for Kostiantynivka, the battle for the city goes on. At this point, it seems unlikely that Russia will be able to gain complete control of the city by the end of 2026. It's still having to lie about that control now, even as its troops are forced into a humiliating retreat. And as Ukraine gets stronger, as it combines its fortifications with counter-assaults and drone strikes targeting the Russian rear in Donetsk, it's hard to see how Russia can make any serious moves anytime soon. It's also not as though Kostiantynivka is the only Ukrainian settlement that is giving Russia some serious headaches. In the Zaporizhia region lies Malotokmachka, a tiny village just a fraction of the size of Kostiantynivka. Malotokmachka has become a 1,500-day nightmare for Russia. It may even be a bigger problem than Kostiantynivka itself, and you can find out why by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this video, we have plenty more coming up. Subscribe to The Military Show and enable notifications to make sure that you are among the first to see them. And thank you, as always, for watching.